Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before, and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out my other social media as well. I'm on both Facebook and Twitter. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of my characters, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Finally, before I begin my Simsational story, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with. Let's go. Today's story is from Audre Whitman, The Audacious Maid, and we're at chapter 9. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though, so without further ado. While they had once had a passionate relationship, after the birth of their daughter, Anton and Audre Lewis had drifted apart. The baby was always needing something, and Anton was working as an officer in the military, the breadwinner of the family, and rarely took an interest in the baby. From the start, Audre had struggled with Cassie, and Anton's hands-off approach hadn't helped. Audre had been left to figure parenting out on her own, while Anton shot off to Mount Komorabi for work. Cassandra had only been a few months old when Anton left, supposedly for just 6 months. That had been almost a year ago, and Audre barely heard from her husband now. The bills were always paid, but otherwise Audre felt alone in this marriage. The more that Audre and her new best friend Thalia talked about it, and the more time that passed with absolutely nothing changing, the more sense Thalia started to make when she told Audre how wrong this all was. Anton was in his 30s when he met Audre, who had only been 18 years old. And in the course of just a few short years, he had changed her life forever. Audre was now 22 years old. She hadn't even had a chance to live before Cassandra had arrived. Now her husband was due to return from Mount Komorabi soon, and what would he find when he got home? The dutiful slave of a fantasy wife he had always demanded that she be? Was that what she really wanted out of life? She had spent almost 5 years now cleaning Anton's toilets, from when she first started as his literal paid maid up until now. Audre didn't even like cleaning. It had just been a way to make quick, easy money with the possibility of big tips from handsome, rich clients like Anton. Somehow, she'd never expected to end up here. Anton, on the other hand, was exactly where he had envisioned himself to be at this stage of his life, if not a little ahead of schedule. By staying in Mount Komorabi that extra 6 months, he had managed to secure his promotion to general and was returning to Evergreen Harbour a very rich man. Rich in more ways than one. While he was away in Mount Komorabi, Anton had managed to pick himself up a secret girlfriend. Clarissa Brumfield was an icily beautiful young woman whose pleasant company Anton had been happily distracted by for many months now. She herself was married to Anton's boss, but neither of them cared about that. Originally, before they had met, Clarissa had merely intended to do what she had done many a time before for her husband, and show the new employee around Mount Komorabi. But then she had met Anton, and the sparks positively flew between the two of them. It hadn't taken long for them to escalate their affair. He had left all that behind him, though, chalking it up to having been just one of those working holiday flings, and was finally coming home to his wife, whom he was surprised to find entertaining company. Anton hadn't told Audrey he was coming. He later told her that he had wanted to surprise her. However, it had been she who had surprised him. Audrey was then forced to give an awkward introduction. She wasn't sure quite how much Anton had heard. They had, unfortunately, been talking about him right as he arrived. She was pretty sure from his body language that he had definitely heard something, but what did he expect? He had been gone for a whole year. What did he expect? He expected her to keep their business to themselves and not go talking about their private marital affairs with anybody else. Anton hadn't meant to start things off badly. He had hoped they could have a fresh start after all this time apart. But this was beyond the pale. Who even was this stranger in his house? Thalia Brown was happy to introduce herself to this ridiculously ugly, stereotypical troglodyte who had interrupted what had been a perfectly pleasant afternoon coffee date with her best friend. Who cared if his wife wanted to talk about him? Maybe, if he didn't want Audrey to complain about him, he should try being a better husband. Anton was furious. He knew that he should have called a little more often, maybe, and he definitely should have tried to visit for Audrey's birthday. But he had sent her those earrings, hadn't he? Regardless, this Thalia Brown woman had no right to be getting involved. Who did she think she was? He didn't care. She could get the heck out of his house right now. Thalia was shocked to see her vibrant, beautiful, and outspoken young friend Audrey stand by quietly and ashamedly as Anton ordered her out of the apartment. This was ridiculous. Audrey was better than this. Anton was just absolute trash. But Thalia knew that Audrey had to make her own decisions here, and so she sadly left. Dinner that night, a herb-encrusted salmon dish Audrey hadn't cooked since Anton was last home, was an awkward affair. Cassie was fine. She barely noticed the new person at the dinner table, let alone realized that it was her father. But Audrey spent the whole evening going over her earlier inaction and cursing herself for not defending Thalia. Anton was still upset too. He couldn't believe that Audrey had betrayed him and his trust like that. They were supposed to be partners, lovers, co-parents. He berated her as he ate, and also insulted her cooking while he was at it. The salmon was disgusting. What had she broiled it in? Soap? Was it any wonder that by the time they got to the bedroom later that night, that Audrey rejected Anton's advances? Well, it was surely a surprise to him. Anton hadn't been home in a year, and despite everything that had happened that evening, he had still expected his wife to welcome his touch, not rebuke it. They had always had such a strong and passionate physical connection that this just didn't make any sense to him. She must have been cheating on him. That was the only possible plausible explanation. Anton reasoned to himself that if she hadn't been getting it from somewhere else, then she would have been just as desperate as he was to reconnect. Audrey was shocked by his out-of-the-blue accusation. She would never cheat on him. However, no matter how much she protested, Anton was now convinced that Audrey had cheated on him during his deployment. Maybe even before that. How was he to be sure that Cassandra was even his child? She looked nothing like him. They argued constantly, and Audrey didn't know how much more of this she could take. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 9 of Audrey Whitman, the Audacious Maid. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!